So in this slideshow, we'll ask an important question. So we'll ask, what is an entrepreneur? And then we'll look at why they matter within our factors of production and our economic system. Okay, so this term entrepreneurship. So it's one of our factors of production. Without entrepreneurs, much of the capital and many of the ideas that generate successful businesses would not be possible. So these are our movers and shakers, our money makers. These are our Bill Gates, our Steve Jobs, these types of people. So they're responsible for organizing the land, labor, and capital. You can't imagine the massive amounts of money it takes to actually organize land, labor, and capital into this production process. And these are the individuals who take the risk to do so. So because they bear the risk involved in their organization, what they're doing is they're putting up huge amounts of money in an attempt to make even larger amounts of money. And sometimes they succeed and sometimes they fail. During the 19th century Industrial Revolution, entrepreneurs were responsible for organizing the factors of production that led to the shift from what we call the domestic system of production to the factory system. So in the 19th century, this is the 1800s, we had the Industrial Revolution. It revolved around the development of the textile industry. And essentially what happened was we saw the development of different types of machinery and technology that would allow these entrepreneurs to organize along river systems to mass produce textiles in a way in which had never before been possible. The domestic system involved essentially the idea that people would go to these different markets and they would buy textiles, and then they would take them home and they would actually hand spin clothes and then sell those. And this market system, instead of buying textiles, essentially what was taking place is these factories would open up and they would buy these massive amounts of materials, and then they would produce the textiles and their clothes themselves and then sell them. And so this would generate much larger revenues and eventually, of course, profits. But it was a complete shift in how they did things, and it was largely the responsibility of individuals with large amounts of money to put up to actually begin this production process. So for the entrepreneur, it's all about increasing profits and reducing cost. So entrepreneurs are always seeking greater profits. If you're not in it for the money to increase profits, and I'm not really sure how you're going to make too much. So in order to increase profits, you need to increase total revenues, and you'll want to reduce your cost. The bigger the difference between total revenue and cost is, the greater amount of profits you're actually going to receive. So this leads to greater profits, but it requires innovation in order to actually develop these ways to increase total revenue and reduce total cost. So there's 4 ways to increase profits in a market economy that we're going to look at. So the first way we can increase our profits is with the introduction of new products. So new products create new markets that had not previously existed. So for example, this is Steve Jobs. He's the Apple CEO when the iPad was introduced. So when we look at what he's doing, this new market is created. Today, more people buy more tablets and computers. So I want you to think about something for a second. This product created an entirely new market, and not just for Apple, but for a lot of other companies as well, particularly companies like Google, Microsoft. All of these companies, once Apple was successful in the production of the iPad, they all entered into this new tablet market. Apple is worth well over $6 billion, and we're not talking about just in stock. We're talking about cash on hand. Apple has one of the largest amounts of cash on hand of any company on the planet. So when you look at the market size, we see here, you'll notice that the PC market size from 2011 to 2017 is increasing. Smartphone is kind of balanced out. But then you look at that tablet market size, and you'll see how much it's increasing, and it's actually closing the gap with the PC market. So in other words, more people are buying tablets than are buying computers today. Even though people are still buying computers, more and more people are moving towards the tablet market. And you'll notice one of the reasons why the smartphone market size is kind of leveled out is because there are just so many people who already have them. So another way to make profit is to improve the quality of existing products. Some entrepreneurs make profits by taking existing products and simply improving them. So you take a thing like the phone, for example, then became the cordless phone, then became the cell phone with the flip, and then on to the smartphone. So over this time period, we've seen the quality improvements of the phone of a current product and basically generating new markets and generating new profits. So the future of our phones is basically like we would have seen from R2D2 in Star Wars and the hologram. Do we expect that our phones are just going to pop up and we're going to talk to a 3D person next? A third way is to introduce new production methods. So we can introduce new products. We can improve current products. We can improve the production methods of which goods were being produced. So remember that part of increasing profits is the ability to reduce cost. So even if we don't necessarily improve the product itself, we can improve how we make the product and reduce the cost of producing it. So if an entrepreneur can find a way to improve production efficiency, then costs go down and profits go up. Henry Ford used the assembly line to mass produce cars cheaply and sell them to the masses. Henry Ford didn't necessarily try to improve the car, rather he improved the production process. So the car is assembled in order every time, quickly and efficiency. So when he did Model Ts, every single Model T from 1 to 100 million looked exactly the same. But in doing so, he improved the process of which they were being produced, and he dramatically shortened and thus cheapened the price at which he could produce them. Nowadays we see this production process day in and day out. In fact, you think about it, previously cars had been assembled one at a time. Ford could make a car in less than 20 minutes. Okay, so the last of our 4 ways of which we can maximize our profits is to introduce new ways of doing business. So not everyone does business the same way. Sometimes finding a new way of doing things generates greater profits than the standard methods in business. So you think about it, we can introduce new products, which creates new markets. We can improve upon current products or improve upon the way that we actually make products, or we can introduce entirely new ways of doing business. So for example, when you think about new ways of doing business, social media is a perfect example. I mean, when you talk about all the different ways in which social media is being used now to communicate and advertise, that's an entirely new way of doing business. So these are all forms of social media that we're looking at. There are also platforms for advertising to those using social media. So Facebook has around 1 billion members. 72 hours of video are uploaded to YouTube every hour. So you can think about how much business possibility there is within those forms of advertising. And when we look at the 4 different ways in which we can try to really maximize our profits, one of the things that's in common with 4 is the ability to generate financial capital. New business ventures are known as startups, and these they're responsible for the acquisition of financial capital. It's crucial to their success. I mean, they'll try to generate X amount of dollars in order to actually launch this product. So we want to look at some ways to acquire the financial capital. When we talk about this financial capital, one way is through universities, grants and research projects. Governments will either dole out money, or they can even create tax breaks in order to basically kind of push forward the development of some products. Loans, which is something we'll talk a lot about here shortly. And then also internet companies. You see a lot of startups today in which they attempt to raise X amount of funds in order to produce some product. For example, a lot of times these companies that are developing, they'll get bought out by larger companies who will begin producing their products, but that's still a way to acquire profits. I mean, if you build your company up and then turn around and sell it for a large amount of money, you're developing profit.